Hi, welcome to Brad's Blades. I wanted to take you through our beginner's journey. I always liked collecting knives and wanted to try building knives. I just never got around to it. So I thought I would go ahead and start. I watched a lot of YouTube videos from great knife makers like Walter Sorrells, Redbeard Ops, Elite Knives, Gentry Custom Knives. Take you through the journey of building a knife, which is really what I want to do. I didn't have the tools necessary to start building knives right away. You can use some simple tools like a file or hacksaw to get the knife done, but it's going to take you, it seemed like it was going to take me quite some time. So I decided to look around and see what some tools would be needed that I could get for not inexpensive, but less expensive than some of the professional tools that I've seen people use. So I wanted to take you through the tools that I think a beginner would benefit from. And they're not cheap tools, but they're not very expensive. So maybe they'll help you in your journey. The first one is a belt grinder. The belt grinder that I bought is a 2x42. A lot of knife makers, professional knife makers that I've seen, they use the 2x72, which is what I would love to be able to get to someday. Just right now, I didn't feel like I needed something that was that expensive to get started. The 2x42 I felt was middle of the road. It wasn't the expensive 2x72 that will run you $1,000 or more, but it's not a 1x30 that you can get from Harbor Freight that is probably under $100 to $100. I did look at the 1x30 because I thought, well, maybe just getting into it, a 1x30 would work out pretty good, but I couldn't find the belts. There wasn't the availability of belts that there is for the 2x42. So that is one reason I picked the 2x42. Another reason was the width, the 2-inch width of the belt. It's width is 2 inches. The length of the belt is 42. If I'm going to get into a 2x72, then go ahead and get a width of 2 inches so that I'm kind of used to dealing with that, and with the platen that's 2 inches. There was another grinder that I was looking at that was a 4x36, and I thought that, well, that's pretty good for woodworking. I don't know how it would be for metal working. So that's why I went with the 2x42. I'll explain in a later video the differences in the model that I bought and some other models that I saw. Another tool that I think is needed that goes along with the belt grinder are the belts. So there are a lot of belts out there for the 2x72 and the 2x42. Again, not so many for the 1x30. But from what I understand and from what I've seen, you need a number of grits. So you need an assortment. You need the grits that are 36, 60, 80 to get a lot of the bulk of the material off. And you need the higher grits to be able to somewhat polish the steel, from what I can understand. So what I did was I looked online, and on Amazon I found some belts, Red Label abrasives and combat abrasives. I did find combat abrasives on Amazon, but I did find Red Label abrasives, and I got an assortment box of Red Label abrasives that were aluminum oxide, or also referred as AO, which aren't expensive. They're not as expensive as the ceramic belts that you'll find. The AO belts don't last as long, but I figured, okay, it's something to get started with. So I did buy the Red Label abrasives box of assortment belts on Amazon, and I started with those. I did find out that after grinding my first knife, that the knife gets really hot really quickly. So I went ahead and I bought ceramic 36 grit belts, and that seemed to take off the majority of the bulk of the steel that I needed off a lot easier, a lot quicker, and the knife didn't get as hot. Now, after the knife was getting hot, I did start plunging in water quite a bit, so that helped as well, I'm sure. But that's what I did, and like I said, on Amazon you can get these belts. An assortment I think was $30. The ceramic belts for 6 of them, I'm not quite sure how much it was, but I can put a link to where I found them on Amazon. The third tool that I think is probably needed is an angle grinder. So this is a 4.5 inch angle grinder that I found at Harbor Freight. Now, when you're taking off a lot of material on your steel, an angle grinder is nice, a bandsaw is nice. I didn't have a bandsaw, and I didn't want to spend that much money on a bandsaw when I could get an angle grinder. It was quite a bit cheaper. I did have a heavy duty angle grinder that I was using for concrete removal, but it was pretty heavy to use when cutting steel. So I did find this 4.5 inch angle grinder pretty cheap, and there was a sale going on, so I figured I'd go ahead and get that, and it seems to work pretty well. I'll be showing you more about those videos later on. Along with the angle grinder, of course, you need cutoff wheels, which again I found at Harbor Freight. You can find them pretty inexpensive. The next tool I would say that I wanted to get was just a digital caliper. So it's nice to have a digital caliper to figure out your bevel height on your knives. However, this is one that I got when I was at Harbor Freight, and it's a cheap 6-inch composite digital caliper. If I known more about calipers, if I did some more research, I probably would have gotten a more expensive one that had a set screw that you could actually set the measurement. So when you're scribing your lines, it doesn't move on you. So that's probably what I would have done. Also, I would have got something that was a little bit better than this composite. Maybe a metal one where I could scribe the lines better, where it would show up better. But I will be getting another one, but this was a cheap one that I got at Harbor Freight, and it seemed to do the job. Along with that, I've seen a lot of knife makers use Dykem steel blue layout fluid. When you're first starting out shaping your knives, what I did was I used a Sharpie, and after I had my template, which I'll get into in a minute, laid out on my knife, I would use the Sharpie to draw out the knife and mark it so that I knew how much steel that I needed to take off, which I still use. The Dykem layout fluid, it helps with your bevel grinds. And what you do is you put it on your blade that you wanted to grind, and you mark the height of your bevel. And this, along with the digital caliper, it helps make a nice bevel line. I like it. I know other people use other materials, other layout fluids probably, but the Dykem seems to work out pretty well for me. Going hand in hand with shaping your knives, you're going to need a template. So I wanted to do something that was better than me just drawing out a knife, a little bit more precise. So I wanted to find a CAD program that was free to be able to use, to be able to have a template that I could go over and over again, and that it's somewhat precise and didn't seem like I drew it in the 3rd grade where the knife was all wonky. So what I did was I looked online, looked on Google, and I found a program for the Mac. It was Shapr3D. So I used that to make my first knife template, and it worked fine as a free program, or at least the version that I had was free. But I didn't realize, I didn't read the fine print, and you can only use it for 2 projects for free, and then you had to pay for it. So I will probably be updating each project and then taking a picture to be able to do the template. But this is how it turned out for the first knife. And what I'll probably be doing, like I said, is updating the projects on Shapr3D and coming up with other templates that way, as well as using some French curve templates that I've seen people use. I think Gentry Custom Knives used them. I think that's where I got that idea, so that I could actually draw out the belly of the blades better than how I was doing it if I did it freehand. So another tool that I'd like to talk about is a Plunge Line Jig. So when you have your knives, you have a plunge line right here, and if you're hand grinding, then it can be somewhat difficult to be able to get the plunge line accurate or straight. So this is a Plunge Line Jig, and again, I just got this off Amazon. You can build them, a lot of people do, but it's 2 pieces of steel, and it has 2 set screws. So what you do is you clamp it onto the knife where your plunge line is going to go, and then when you're grinding your knife, when you're free grinding your knife on your belt grinder, you don't go past that line. So it doesn't go past it. So it keeps it nice and straight. Again, this was a very inexpensive one on Amazon. They can be a lot more expensive, and people a lot of times will just build these themselves. But I felt that it was not expensive, so I could go ahead and get it if I wanted to get my plunge line straight. Along with that, I decided to get some files. These are Nicholson files. They're mill files. They're both 6-inch. This is, I think, a 6-inch round bastard file. This is a 6-inch triangular file. And there's a difference between mill files and woodworking files. I didn't know this at first. So what I tried to do, I was using some woodworking files to try and get the plunge line on my knife, and it wasn't working out that great. So the difference in the mill file and the woodworking file would be the teeth. So a lot of times the mill file will use carbide tungsten teeth for the file, whereas the woodworking file will use HSS, which is high speed steel, and it will dull fairly quickly if you use a wood file for filing the plunge line on your knife. Now, I thought that this was a pretty good method. I saw Red Beard Ops do it. He started out with a triangular file and put a line, and then he uses a chainsaw file to actually do the plunge line. So it seemed to work out pretty well when I switched to the mill files. Another tool that I wanted to talk about was my bevel jig. So this is a bevel jig. I found out early on that it takes a lot of practice to freehand grind your knife and actually get it somewhat even. It's very much a skill that you acquire once you do it. But I found some bevel jigs online. This one again was not expensive. I did some research, and there are some real expensive ones. This one I felt was inexpensive. It had what I needed to be able to get a good bevel grind. What I would do differently, or what I would look for, is something that had an angle measurement, so that you can measure your angle for when you dial your plate, and something that had maybe was bigger width-wise to hold your knife in place better, because what I'm using is a pretty thick handle, and I had to maneuver it so that it could keep it in place while I'm actually using it against the belt grinder. This is the one that I'm using right now. It's not specific. It's a smaller one that's specific for smaller knives. This is a larger knife that I'm trying to work on right now. So it's not designed for this, but even my smaller knife that I used this for, it was the same way. I would have to kind of press this onto it to keep it straight, which seems to work out okay. But if I was gonna look for another one, I probably want one that's thicker here, so that I could actually press it pretty accurately, pretty snugly right here, instead of doing it this way. Like I said, it works, and I'm able to get, at least I think, a better grind on my bevel than when I was doing it freehand. Now I will still go back to freehand, because that's a skill that I want to learn. But I felt that right now, as a beginner, this would help me get, well, maybe not as frustrated. I think those are probably the tools. Now, some of the things that you'll need to be a beginner knife maker is you're going to need some stock. You're going to need some steel stock. From what I've been told and what I've seen on Amazon, on YouTube, a lot of knife makers start with 1084 steel stock. I picked this up on Amazon. It was a package of 6 for under $30. It's 1/8 of an inch thick by 1.5 inches thick by 12 inches long, and it seems to work out pretty well as far as shaping my knives and doing my bevel grinds I'll find out later as far as the heat treatment goes, how that works. I haven't heat treated any knives. I did purchase a forge, and I will be using that to heat treat my knives. There are a couple of different ways to heat treat knives. A forge seemed more economical for me than a heat treating oven, which the heat treating oven can get more precise as far as your temperature, but like I said, the forge seemed more economical for me, and I'll have more videos on the forge later on. I wanted to get some knives shaped and the bevels grinded before going ahead and doing the heat treatment. So that wraps up this video on 10 knife making tools for beginners. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.